There we go. It's Global Entrepreneurship Week. And we are excited to have each and every one of you here. You see all the festive balloons and whatnot going on. So my name is Aaron Wiggum. I'm the program director at Atento Capital, which is the VC fund here in Tulsa. And I want to welcome you to another edition of 1 Million Cups. If you're not familiar with 1 Million Cups, it is, I like to coin it as the Toastmasters for entrepreneurs. It's an opportunity for you to speak to a group of your peers and to present your thesis and get critical feedback from a community of entrepreneurs. And so I welcome you. If this is your first time, if this is your recurring visitor, thank you for coming back. We have two wonderful presenters today coming from different angles, but it's going to be great. The one presenter just moved here within the last 7 days. Like they're fresh off the press. And so we want to give them a nice also welcome, as well as for both presenters. So a few house rules. We do have bathrooms just down the hall here. We also want to thank our sponsors, 36 Degrees North, Devin Laney and his crew, Abby and JB in the back, Abby Wells and all the crew. Thank you so much, Tara Payne. And then we also want to thank our leadership team, Mitch Sims here. We have Ethan Harkey. We have Sean McCroskey. Give us a wave, Sean. And Tara Payne in the back. This is our leadership team that brings you 1 Million Cups from month to month. 1 Million Cups meets every third Wednesday of the month. This month, we made it the second Wednesday because of Global Entrepreneurship Week. All right. So we encourage you to engage in all the activities that are going on throughout Global Entrepreneurship Week. Make sure that you just kind of engraft yourself. There's a great litany of programming that's happening right here at 36 Degrees North. All right. So you guys ready to get this started? Yep. All right. We asked that all feedback would be positive, and that you would give critical, not be nobody will be snarly or make sure that you have something positive and constructive to say. But we have the we like to call this more like a dolphin tank than a shark tank, where we all kind of swimming in the same direction. All right. So I want to bring up the first presenter. He is a native of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We don't get to meet a whole lot of natives here, right? There's a whole bunch of transplants going on around here. But he actually is a native and a son of Tulsa. And he has done amazing work here with community development, with this idea that he's going to present to us today. He's taken this idea nationally. He was had a Forbes article just a few weeks ago about the work that he's doing. And so there is, he's also been doing some work with Bloomberg Industries around the work that he's doing. So you guys want to pay attention and give your full attention to none other than Terrence Billingsley, the Black Tech Street.
I appreciate you, Aaron. I always tell him Aaron is one of my favorite people because he loves to do the work. And every time I do something and he tells me congratulations, I say I'm trying to get like him, because I am. So yeah, it's an honor to be here today. And as Aaron told you, my name is Terrence Billingsley, and I'm the founder and executive director of Black Tech Street. Can you all hear me, by the way? Yep. Let me go. All right. The founder and executive director of Black Tech Street. And Black Tech Street is an initiative to rebirth Black Wall Street as a premier Black tech ecosystem, and essentially use the Black Wall Street narrative to catalyze this movement of Black people embracing STEM and entrepreneurship to build wealth and impact the world. So I get to walk around here. So to give you a little bit of the origin story, so I'm a born and raised Tulsa, relative of Tulsa race master survivors, and this concept came up for me asking myself the question, what could Black Wall Street have been had it been supported and not destroyed? And looking at the level of tenacity and out of the box thinking that it took for these Black entrepreneurs to build these incredible businesses during Jim Crow, that attitude of thinking outside the box, getting around new barriers, reminded me a lot of the technology industry. When I coupled that with the fact that the tech industry is kind of one of the only industries in which you can build intergenerational wealth in 17 years, be a successful exit. It's the core medium through which most of all global innovation is taking place. and the fact that by the year 2030, there will be 4.3 million vacant tech jobs due to a tech talent shortage. These are high-paying jobs. I not only saw an incredible opportunity to help Black people close the racial wealth gap, I also saw the Black Wall Street vision kind of drawn to its natural conclusion. So that's where the name Black Tech Street came from. And, you know, that's our mission. Rebirth Black Wall Street's premier capital of Black tech. So why a Black tech ecosystem? Kind of as I just kind of, you know, talked about, incredible opportunity in tech, low barriers to entry that can serve as a baseline for other things you want to do down into. But also, you know, there's no such thing as, you know, just tech's not just one industry. There's no such thing as not being a tech person. You know, tech is a universally applicable accessory that can be applied to any discipline. And specifically, particularly for the Black community, COVID showed us that, you know, we've got to be resilient. There's no such thing as not being a tech person. Because if you're not a tech person, you're not up to date in what the world is today. So when we say Black Tech Street, we're not simply focusing on high growth, these companies that are trying to scale. We're talking about using technology as a medium to enhance Black business and Black innovation. So again, what is a Black Tech ecosystem? So a Black Tech ecosystem is the ecology of institutions within Black communities that are optimized and aligned to expedite the growth of Black innovation. And some of these listed here are Black founders, innovators, scientists, and it does include all of that. But I'm going to emphasize this sentence about just these institutions within Black communities that are kind of aligned to optimize Black innovation, because that goes outside of just conventional high growth tech companies. So when you hear Black Tech Street in this thesis, understand that that's what we mean. We're talking about centering tech and using it as a medium to enhance Black business and innovation. So some of y'all probably wondering, well, how you gonna do that? You know, this is a pretty incredible, you know, task. Matter of fact, let me take a step back. How many of you are familiar with Black Wall Street? Okay, that's good. There was a time when I would ask that question, nobody would raise their hand. So we're coming along. So getting back to our approach. So how are we going to tackle this? So Black Tech Street got 6 strategic pillars: entrepreneur support, narrative and communications, capital, workforce, infrastructure, and policy. These pillars were kind of strategically chosen because these 6 together kind of encompass the entirety of what an ecosystem is and what it needs. And our goal is to facilitate $1 billion worth of investment in this community over the next 10 years via these 6 strategic pillars, kind of using them as guidelines. So, you know, how are we going to use them? So Black Tech Street, some of you are probably wondering, so what is Black Tech Street directly doing? We've been doing a lot of vision setting and narrative setting to kind of get the idea of Tulsa's Black Tech ecosystem out there. We've done a pretty good job of that. But now we're kind of getting into our actual phase of where we're directly working. So Black Tech Street is currently working to convene the entire city to create a 10-year ecosystem innovation strategy. We've already got partners like TAO, the Greater Tulsa African American Affairs Commission, who will be some partnering with Greenwood Main Street. But what our goal is, we want to create a strategy that kind of serves as a roadmap for the entire ecosystem to get from where we are now to a successful Black tech ecosystem. So we're not just talking about the institutions that are specifically focused on Black people. We want the people, the ones who aren't, to also have specific, you know, marching orders on how can they plug in. We want capital that's to be invested in this area to kind of be able to be directed to say, this is where the gaps are. This is where investing will be most impactful. But we also, it's core to the Black Tech Street thesis that we build this alongside the community. You know, a lot of things fail because we create these elaborate strategies. We just try to push them on people. But for things to really be successful, specifically in the Black community as it relates to Tulsa, the community has to have its fingerprints all over whatever it is that's been built. So using these six strategic pillars as a reference point, we want to co-convene around each of the 6 pillars, whether you be an ESO, an economic stakeholder, an entrepreneur, depending on which pillar you touch. We want to convene, get to know what the issues are, and create not just a resource map, but a relational map that shows how people can actually interact with each other. And we want at the end of this strategy, every organization and every entity within our ecosystem to have very specific marching orders to see how they can affect a certain pillar to get us to the ecosystem goals that we need. So yeah, we want to build a relational map, you know, ascertain the strengths and weaknesses of the ecosystem, kind of identify where we are now and set the goal for where we need to go, compiled a list of different programs and things that need to exist, or the different entities who can pick up the slack per se, and end up filling some of these needs. But overall, we recognize that we need to get together and organize a plan. If we're going to be a Black Tech Street, it's not just going to be the work of one organization or a few organizations. It's going to be the entire city kind of working together towards this collective goal. So pretty soon, some of you in this room will actually be getting this as we partner with Teo to release this. You will be getting some of the little pamphlets that talk about what we're trying to do. This initiative, this project that we're calling it in 2031. So in 2031, that's where we want to be in 2031. Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, so we'll be convening stakeholders across a lot of different areas. A lot of the Building Tulsa accelerators, some of these organizations that focus on talent development, the ecosystem building organizations, and a big one is kind of the actual narrative influencers. So we're not just talking about companies. We got the Black Wall Street Times, we've got the Tulsa World. What can we be doing to further lay the groundwork to show that Tulsa is reinventing itself as a place that is friendly for Black innovation and Black visionaries? So in conclusion, I know y'all probably heard about Black Tech Street. Some of y'all probably sick of hearing about it, but it's gonna keep being around. But I feel like through technology, Tulsa has a very unique opportunity to reinvent itself, but also provide opportunities for the Black community to build wealth and impact the world. Since tech does have such incredible opportunities, it's got low barriers to entry and something that can enhance pretty much anything somebody does. We really feel like using this approach to build out this strategy, we can not only build something that's for our community, but we can create a blueprint for people doing this in other communities and creating solutions that are for, by, and of the communities they're for. Thank you. Good.
All right. So we have any questions, or who wants to kick us off?
Thank you. That was a very high-level presentation. Can you either give a real example or an imagined example of the future, your ideal case, like something a little more concrete, like a real person and their business and what technology they use?
Absolutely. So this is actually something we haven't announced yet, but I'll use it as an example. Black Tech Street has been working with Hewlett-Packard to actually get a program called the HP Teaching Fellows in Tulsa. So they have a program with an entity that they call Digital Promise, where they take teachers, they connect them with a massive network of other teachers that know best practice and know the best use of different digital technologies. And they help them learn how to better administer and teach STEM curriculum to better encourage their kids to get into STEM. This is a really incredible program. HP makes 25 spots available and nationwide. Last year, I think they had 600 people apply. This year, in partnership with Black Tech Street, every single one of those positions will be made available to North Tulsa teachers. So hopefully, clearly in the workforce part, that'll do a lot to touch the kids, while they're in school and kind of help put them on pathways to STEM education.
Terrence, if you could repeat the question when they asked.
Oh, for sure.
For the virtual listeners.
Absolutely.
Francis?
Yeah. So first of all, a comment. I thought that the 6 pillars is awesome. Like that really spoke to me. I love that you got policy in there because tech policy is an area that is ripe for disruption. Like we really need innovative thinkers and people that think about community and technology on society. So I think that really spoke to me. One thing I would like to understand more is the 10-year plan. So what do you think are the key? Maybe I just struggle to follow. But what are the key next steps? Say is it creating a tech factory for people to plug ideas into? What is it?
So that's part of what
your question.
Oh, my bad, you just told me. Okay, so what are the next steps? So what are the key next steps in the 10-year plan? Essentially, is that your question? You're saying? So yeah, so in terms of next steps, I'll give you the next steps for the 10-year plan, and I'll kind of answer this other question, next steps in general. but I'll take the second one first. So rather than just prescribing certain things, I mean, you can look at an ecosystem and see where it's missing, and see what it can be enhanced with. But again, in my community, we have the phrase, what you do for me without me, you do to me. And that applies even if you're of the community. So when it comes to figuring out what the next steps are, what the ecosystem needs, the point of the plan is actually to convene and get this feedback from the entrepreneurs we serve, from the ecosystem, and actually from the different economic stakeholders. So instead of just building out something that we think to be a pre-prescribed solution, we can actually create something together that says we saw this need and we want to actually go. So that's in terms of the actual 10-year plan. So again, told you we've been working with Teo. We've got certain documents we're going to be sending out to some of the economic stakeholders. And towards the end of the year, we'll actually be having a preliminary conversation with them to actually set the stage for how these convenings are going to go, what we plan to get out of them. And beneath the leadership team, we'll kind of have a steering committee that's made up of entrepreneur support entity representatives, local entrepreneurs, and North Tulsa community representatives, so that they can kind of guide the conversation and make sure it's going in a way that's actually going to have the most and the greatest impact. But our first convenings will actually start at the beginning of next year. But as of right now, we're still working behind the scenes to finalize, how we want to move and get everybody on board. But there should be a representative from most of the major organizations I've kind of identified. Thank you for the question.
Questions? Mitch?
Tyrants, what do you see as like maybe three biggest barriers for your initiative?
So I appreciate that question. One of the biggest barriers, again, one of the three biggest barriers that I see to Black Tech Street being successful, the initiative being accomplished. One of the biggest, probably the biggest barrier at first, which is why we did a lot to, get the idea out there, put a lot of articles out, is the narrative. It really all starts with narrative. Before you get into programming, before you get into any of this, you've got to have local people being able to look in the mirror and say, I'm what a successful tech entrepreneur looks like. I can utilize tech to enhance my business, or I'm what a successful technologist looks like. But you also have to put the narrative out there to say, Tulsa is a place for Black entrepreneurs, visionaries. And believe me, I'm speaking this into existence. Don't get me started. We're not quite there yet. But that's the whole point of Black Tech, trying to get this narrative out there and make it real. Why would I come to the city that's known for destroying its most prosperous Black community? Why would I do that? I know it was 100 years ago, but why would I do that? That's why the narrative building is so important. You've got to remove that barrier in people's minds and in the psyche of potential people entities who could drive economic development. Probably that's, and to be honest, I'd say that's 80% of the barrier. You get that out. I mean, the rest of it is logistics that will kind of plague anybody trying to do anything. But that, getting people out and getting them to actually connect and believe in the vision in a way that actually allows them to get skin in the game on it. And then probably the last one, the last barrier will probably be imposter syndrome. Not for me as an individual, but in general. I'm sure a lot of people probably feel that way when you're trying to tackle an industry that has been historically homogenous, historically that's the one industry a lot of people of color specifically stay away from because they know it has this problem. So again, kind of all of that ties in. Sorry?
So being that I grew up within the community, I know and I've seen firsthand the creation of Black people. I know, that we can create all different types of things. Somebody who's not necessarily inside the community, why is it important for Black Tech Street to succeed?
It's important for Black Tech Street to succeed because I'm just bad. I'm just bad. Why is it important for Black Tech Street to succeed? From the perspective of people who are outside of the community, because the Black Wall Street narrative, even though it's something that was specific to Tulsa, there wasn't just one Black Wall Street, but even if there had been, Black Wall Street belongs to all Black entrepreneurs in a way that you'd be hard pressed to find another example of what inspires Black entrepreneurs the way Black Wall Street does. Black Tech Street success is so important because I feel using that very same industry, Black Tech Street has a story that can transform the industry by mobilizing Black people into this industry, giving them the opportunities to build wealth and impact the world, but also unleashing creativity. African Americans, or just Black people in general, have always been some of the world's greatest innovators. It's in history. Yet for some reason, we've almost come to this point where STEM and entrepreneurship are things we specifically avoid or are afraid of. Why would Muhammad Ali be afraid to step in the ring? You know, that's kind of the energy. That's kind of the energy behind Black Texture. This is kind of your birthright. You know, you've been building things for as long as we've been, and even before that, gotta reclaim.
So let me continue. I love that answer. And why then would someone who is not Black, like, why would they care? How does it benefit someone who does not look like me? I want to know. I mean, seeing the name is Black Texture, so maybe some people might feel like, well, that doesn't include me, and really there's nothing I can do.
Totally. So why? Why is the success of Black Texture important to people who aren't Black? So we've got partners who we work with, and you know, at Second Use, they say this all the time. It's because racism isn't, these barriers, they are the glass ceiling. For all of human history, the world has been pushed forward by the innovations of a small few, whether that be kings, priests, or feudal, or for whatever reason. The best innovations we've known are innovations that were born in systems that oppress most of the population. Can you imagine a world where everybody's innovative and creative capability is able to be mobilized towards pushing society forward? That's what Black Texture is, the first of that, but this mindset will initiate a shift that sees that across everybody, not just Black people. So why should you care? A, for that reason. B, because Black people mobilizing in the tech industry and the economy is not only going to help the economy, but it's also going to help inform the tech industry of new perspectives and help its products be less harmful to the world around us. So if you're not Black and you see that, I would say you support Black Texture because you know Black Texture is the first fruits of a much larger, I would say, transformation that's getting ready to come in our economy.
Oh. So my question is almost like the flip of that in a way, which is like anytime you're trying to institute any form of change, there's always resistance to change of some sort. So passive resistance, active resistance, what kind of challenges are you seeing in terms of both passive resistance, what you're doing, and active resistance, what you're doing, and how you overcome that?
So what kind of challenges do I see in terms of passive resistance and active resistance? Passive resistance, I mean, sometimes there's just the kind of resistance that comes with when an idea is so different than anything you've ever seen before. You might not necessarily not want it to succeed, but when it's so different, you end up resisting. It's human nature. We like to cling to what we know. And something like this, I mean, this is something different than what has been known specifically in Tulsa before. We can talk about America, but I'm talking specifically about Tulsa. Even though Tulsa did see this before and they didn't react in the best way, you know, there's that. But when people see things like this, people are often passive because they don't know if it's possible and they're wondering. Sometimes I'm sure people look at Black Texture and they're wondering, you know, like, am I going to be excluded from that? You know, how is this working? That's why it's really important for again, in our narrative, to talk about Black Texture as the first fruits of something larger that'll benefit everybody, something that'll benefit everybody in and of itself, but also it's important to bring those people along. Because the people who are passively resisting typically aren't resisting because they're really just opposed. They just need to be convinced. For the people who actively resist, I mean, we saw that question. I mean, it had implications far beyond Black Texture. So I mean, I don't have anything to say to them except kick rocks. But you know, other than that, you know, sometimes you gotta smash the barriers. And it's not comfortable for everybody, but it's necessary. It's best for everyone. In my opinion, I don't know what's best for everyone. You know where I'm going.
Questions? Going once. All right. Last question for you, Terrence. What is your ask of this community?
My ask of this community is to support and champion the Black Texture narrative, but also when we get these convenings going, share them, participate. The people who are identified will have a specific role. And if you were not identified, you might not necessarily, you know, be participating as directly, but be there. You can still be present. You can still help, you know, guide the conversation. Because even if you're not Black, You know, it's going to take everybody to build this. You know, the city destroyed Black Wall Street. So be a part of the solution of rebuilding it. And that's not just for Black people, that's all of us. So my ask for y'all is to be engaged, champion this vision, and let's help build this.
How do they follow you? How do they find you?
Right. So you can find me, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, Thomas Brooks II, or follow Black Tech Street on any of those platforms. You know, keep up with us. Also love your feedback. If there are things that we think we could do to improve, always open to that, but check us out.
Let's give them a hand. All right, so that was absolutely wonderful. We have the second presenter, two presenters that are coming up right after this. We have a quick commercial here we're going to do. And so I encourage you to go get coffee, get some donuts. We have coffee and donuts today from Dunkin' Donuts. I went out of my way. There's so much I love y'all. I tell you how much I love you. Early in the morning, I went out of my way. I went away from the city to go get you some Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not taking none of this stuff home. Take your make sure you get some coffee and some donuts. Sorry, you want to come over to the announcements. Feel free to move about.
So funny, I feel like I'm in church. Announcements. All right. So, good morning. Y'all doing okay? Yep. That was great, wasn't it? Yep. Let's give them another hand. So, as you know, if you come to 1 Million Cups before, we do have different organizations and different businesses and ideas pitched. We like to give you an update. So at this time, what we're going to do is bring Mark Lamont up, and he's going to give us an update. He previously pitched, I don't remember which month it was. He previously pitched, and do you remember? August. I believe he pitched in August.
Presented.
Cecilia said he presented. He presented, thank you, Cecilia, in August, and we want to get an update as to what Cadenzo's been up to. They're doing some great things. I want to call Mark up. You guys can go ahead.
So good to see you all again. Glad to be back at base camp, seeing so many awesome, familiar, and friendly faces up here. Like Tara said, my name is Mark Lamont, CEO and co-founder of Cadenzo. We are an online marketplace that connects local artists and local venues so they can quickly find and seamlessly book one another. So local venues like Mercury Lounge, breweries, coffee shops that have live music, they're currently booking all of their shows manually via emails, phone calls, text messages, Google calendars, paper calendars. And we have created a seamless experience where they can quickly find one another, book one another, and manage all of the planning of their shows. So we are currently in beta. We did like a whole rebrand. I'm representing today. Thank you. Woo! So feel free to check out our new landing page. It is Cadenzo, CADENZO.io. We are currently, we have our wait list. So if you want to get early access, or you know an artist or somebody that might want early access, we've got some really cool prizes attached to that, and that ends this Sunday. The wait list is growing super fast. We added like 45 people last night alone. So if you want to be in the top 50 that won a prize, get on that. So you can find that at cadenzo.io. And then if you have any venues that would potentially like to pilot with us, we're going to be piloting with Mercury Lounge here over the next month and a half. But if you know any others, we'd love an intro. I'm excited to hear the next presentation, and I'll be around to answer any questions or talk. Thanks, y'all.
Mark recently got married, so let's go around. All right, so also next month for 1 Million Cups, we're not going to be doing a presentation, not a pitch. We are actually going to do like a collaboration between the ecosystem. So there's going to be like some fun holiday type celebration things going on. Stay tuned for the dates. You definitely don't want to miss that. Tomorrow at 5:30 here at Base Camp, Startup Grind is actually going to be here for another fireside pitch. We will have Mike Noche, Veranovium. I think I said that correctly. Veranovum. Did I? Veranovum. Cecilia, now you're my person, see? And I'm going to look to you like, okay, Mom? So be back here tomorrow at 5:30 for Startup Grind. Also, do you know anybody who would like to present Do you want to present? You should. You want to talk to Aaron and somebody in the team? We got Aaron, we got Mitch. Aaron's really the person that you should talk to because he knows. But
Call Mitch.
Call Mitch. Call Mitch. So we are ramping up for the new year. We want to get some great presentations. And if you know somebody who you think would be great, then send them our way, okay? All right. Y'all ready for the next presentation? Yes.
You have 37 and a half hours to submit for South by Southwest. The deadline to submit if you have a startup is 11 o'clock tomorrow night.
Okay. Did you all hear that? Okay. Do you have any questions? Talk to Cecilia. Tammy, you got a pitch coming up tomorrow.
Yes.
We do. Pitch competition with at the incubator tomorrow. Jason, who's sitting back there in the blue, will be one of the pitch contestants, but come out and join us and see as we get, it's our first of 3. So we culminate next year doing our big pitch competition at One Oak Field at Driller Stadium. So come tomorrow, noon.
All right, any other announcements in the audience? Need to know about? No? Okay. These guys are getting set up here. As Tara said, we will be doing next month the ecosystem holiday party. So 1 Million Cups, Startup Grind, a few other ecosystem builders are going to get together and have a holiday party. Alex and myself and a couple other ones, we have not nailed down the details yet, so we don't have them. When we do, we will get the information to you. All right, but that will be next month in lieu of 1 Million Cups. All right, so you guys ready? Yeah. I'll give you this mic. All right, okay, all right. So, and I need you guys to give a nice, warm Tulsa welcome. These guys just moved here within the last week. They told me their kids just started school this week. Here today, first day of school. Brian here is coming from North Carolina. Paul here is coming from Seattle, and they are now Tulsans. And they have a wonderful thesis that they're going to share with us today. We met them a few months ago as they became one of our portfolio companies at Atento Capital. They had a wonderful presentation they did for our team, and you guys are just really in for a treat. At the end of this, you probably will maybe signing up for subscriptions with their information. So put your hands together. Nice Tulsa welcome to A Billion Minds.
Thank you very much. That was quite the warm-up. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So thank you. I'm Ryan. This is Paul. And you know what, Paul? We got to up our shirt game. So, but who's got the shirt contact? Cadenza, Text Street. Yeah. So get us. So we're putting our ask out there first. We gotta up our shirt game. All right. All right. So Billion Minds. So what are we about? And words matter. So personal effectiveness made easy for everyone. What does that mean? It implies that we're democratizing a set of skills. Our mission is to help 1 billion people not just survive, but truly thrive in this digital era. When I say digital era, I don't just mean this time frame. I mean this crazy, always on, unstructured, ambiguous environment that we live and work in now. All right, so I'm a high energy guy and I like to stay positive, but I got to bring it down just for a second and draw your attention to this statistic. 120,000 deaths attributed to workplace stress. That's in the US alone, just in the past year.
Actually, those are pre-pandemic numbers.
Pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic. Imagine what it's like in COVID era, right? So many people don't even know this stat. And then HBR did a Beyond Burnout series. I don't know if anybody had seen that, which is great. And it actually, extends and buttresses this statistic with other global study. It talks about 89% of people are on a path to burnout. It's crazy. This status quo is not something that's tenable for not just society, not just for US, but for like mankind, for humankind. We have a species level mental crisis that's going on right now. So how did we get here? We like to look back at how tech has got us here specifically.
And actually, I really like the statement that was made earlier about, everybody has to become a tech person in some way, shape, or form. Well, we kind of have, and this has kind of evolved over time. This has been almost a slow burn over the last 30 years. When you look at the evolution of technology, first we had PCs, and then we had PCs that were more designed to be multitasking operating systems. Then we get into LANs and webs, and then we get browsers, then we get browser tabs, so now we can do more tabs open at once. Then we get to mobility, then the apps on our mobile platform. Does anybody in the room not have a smartphone on them right now? You don't. Congratulations. We're gonna do a study on you. So what this has all given us is tremendous flexibility. We can work from anywhere at any time now, which is great, right? But there are byproducts to that we haven't really addressed as a species, really. What are the byproducts of flexibility? Breaking down that structure that has given us a framework to live our lives. Now you can do work while you're sitting at the ball game watching your kids. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends on if you're being effective or not in what you're supposed to be doing, right? And so then COVID hit, poured gasoline all over this, but a lot of people seem to think that COVID caused this whole burnout problem. That's not the case. This pandemic, this burnout pandemic was happening pre-COVID. COVID just poured gasoline on it. And now what we're facing is a tremendous challenge because this great resignation is gaining steam now. And as we approach the gig economy, we've got to get this right. Now, people by design are going to be digital nomads working anywhere. So if we don't get this right over the next decade, humanity is going to have some problems. All right, so this is us, a little bit about us. So Paul and I both came from Microsoft. He's kind of the brains, and I'm kind of the mouthpiece. And so, is that right? That's the first time I ever used that. I don't know. I'm the beauty of brains. That was really definitely very self-effacing on my part. We had dream jobs at Microsoft. We were co-founders of an internal startup. Now, how cool is that, right? So we were able to take Microsoft salaries and have the entrepreneurial experience, right? But what we became obsessed with was not the problem we were solving in this giant enterprise. What we became obsessed with was how hard that was to do. It was nearly impossible to get up every day and be motivated. We had autonomy, we had mastery, we had flexibility, we had all these things that you think that you would love in a job, especially in a job in a corporate environment in a great organization like Microsoft. But all we could think about all day is how stressful it was, how hard it was to erect our own structure, to motivate ourselves, and to get through the day feeling a sense of accomplishment. So this came about, I guess, as I say, about a year ago, something along those lines. And as we started to look into this in a little bit more detail, what we realized was that not only was this a problem that was affecting, actually almost anybody that was doing unstructured and ambiguous work, but it was also starting to have a real effect on the economy as a whole. Yeah, so that's what's really happened, I think, over the course of the last year in particular. There's this combination of these very, very high burnout rates and then a reassessment of people's lives that has happened during the course of the pandemic, which of course has led to the Great Resignation, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It really is real. I mean, over the course of the last few months, every month, month on month, 4 million people quitting their jobs month after month. And many of those people in the prime of their careers, 30 to 45 age range, and many of those people leaving a job without another job to go to. That gives you an indication as to just how significant this reassessment of people's lives is right now, and how unsustainable the approach that we have to managing work in the context of our broader life is. Does anybody know what the attrition rates are for a tech company right now?
I mean, it varies a great deal.
But it's between 30 and 35%.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And by the way, somebody who is deployed today inside an organization, somebody joins an organization today worldwide across any job, the likelihood of them still being in that job 1 year later is only 75%. So 25% of those people will actually leave their job within 1 year. So when Ryan and I were forming the company, we did a whole bunch of research about this. Up to 300 people now, we're close to 1,000. And what we realized, aside from these broader technology trends, is that the underlying problem is really centered around employees lacking the right practical skills to thrive in this world where work and the rest of our lives are merging. So work and the rest of our lives merge is totally different to how it used to be, and you need a set of skills in order to be able to thrive in that. Now, there have been attempts to be able to deal with this in terms of like mindset training and things like that, and that has some good effects. But what really people need is practical tools to be able to accomplish it, and that is what Brilliant Minds is about. So we provide a behavioral science-based employee experience platform that is explicitly designed and built from the ground up for the digital era, with the goal of helping people enhance their overall productivity and reduce their stress well-being. So the way we put this together is a core platform, core software platform that basically nudges users towards the most effective behaviors regardless of their work style. And we supplement that with structured learning that is delivered as micro-learning opportunities through basically videos, 3 to 5 minute videos. And then we supplement that with support and accountability through what we refer to as personal effectiveness guides. And so collectively, this forms effectively behavioral change in employees that helps them manage their work in the context of their organization. Our product, it's really interesting to figure out how we compare to other products. It is somewhat unique approach that we're looking to build here. We have kind of 3 adjacent categories. One is the personal productivity software, one of these coaching and scale platforms, and the third one are personal improvement and wellness software categories. So we take elements of all of these areas, but we really do kind of cut across those categories because we're built from the ground up with this idea of being able to build people with the practical skills and create practical skills necessary to survive in this type of era. So we're going right now as a B2B push, and we're going to expand that into new segments. But ultimately, as Brian mentioned, what we're looking at is that group of 1 billion people. So today, 1 billion people do unstructured and ambiguous work. Over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, as technology takes more of a hold, as robotics and AI take more of a hold, that figure will double. There will be 2 billion people in the world that are doing this strongly unstructured and ambiguous work. And even beyond that, this whole idea of work and the rest of our lives merging is only going to increase over time. So we have to get to a point where we can start, if you like, with CHRO, Chief People Officer inside organizations, and then from there, build out into the Lord. And that's it. Thank you very much.
So who wants to kick us off? Questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They talked about 1 billion minds and y'all sitting there like, mind, what's that? I want those minds. Yeah. John.
Am I limited to one? No. So as an employer of a large number of folks through my career, and really with COVID, I hear what you're saying. Like I was seeing signs of this prior to, but COVID brought it to an acute focus. And for me personally, I experienced the same thing where I was kind of done with what I was doing before, and COVID said, okay, you need to do something different now. And I always coach people, never, you always look for a job while you're employed. Yeah. And Aaron knows this. I've stepped away and said, I need to try something new. And so I spent the last 6 months doing that and researching a lot of different companies and a lot of different ways to get the work done. My question is this: are we looking at becoming more effective in what we're supposed to do today? Or are we looking at how can we be effective as ourselves in today's market? Meaning, I think employers will take all the work we can get from our brains all day long. And that hasn't changed, right? We send lots of training, hey, work-life balance, right? But the reality is 24/7, 365. Yeah. And so what I've been looking at and studying is ways to basically turn it off, because you've got to slow the brain down and you've got to have separation. And so I remember the days of having a beeper, right? How cool is that? I can always be contacted. That sucked after the first day, right? But we are always on. And so, just some of the stuff I've looked at is it good to be always on? And I've come to the personal conclusion that it's not. So, put it away. So the question is, the question is, as we do this in personal effectiveness, are we helping the individual be effective in today's market, or are we helping today's market change?
Right. So actually,
You're a question.
yeah, I will. Are we helping people be effective in today's market, or are we helping today's market change? And there's an element in your commentary as well that I want to address as well, which is the commentary was basically talking about switching off versus being always connected, and how important is it to be able to switch off. So let's start with the first part, and then I'll also address the second part. So for us, it's most definitely both, but it starts with helping people be effective in today's market. So we break down everything we do. We have this thing we refer to as a personal effectiveness hierarchy. And this personal effectiveness hierarchy, almost like Maslow's hierarchy needs. So personal effectiveness hierarchy, bottom part of it is optimize your day. So in other words, just get through the day easier, right? Be able to get at the end of the day, get to the end of the day and switch off, sense of accomplishment, start the next day motivated. The thing that builds on from that, we call it optimize your connections, which is basically how you interact with a whole bunch of people. People are optimizing their connections right now, right in this room, right? And then the third piece is what we refer to as optimize your future, which loosely is what do I want to be when I grow up? What we found through our research is that people can't actually get to the second one and the third one if they're struggling too much with the first one, right? And so what we do with the tool and the other things is actually start to put pieces of those structure back in to allow you as an individual to be able to, for example, switch off at the end of the day most effectively. So a core piece of our tool, for example, is something that allows you to view your whole life, but then switch off parts of it. So we even have what we refer to as a digital door, which is like, I am done with work, work disappears. Now all I've got is the rest of my life. I can bring work back if I need to, but I consciously bring work back. So that piece of it is extremely important. Now, the reason why I say it's both is because when we started working inside organizations, we started helping people actually get to a point where they're recreating some of that structure. They're recreating a sustainable approach to being effective that involves switching off from work, that involves, for example, putting boundaries between work and non-work and things like that. The companies start to realize, some of them know already, which is why they're honest. In other cases, the companies start to realize that actually, you know what, my employees are being more effective because they're showing up at work motivated, right? They're showing up at work excited to be able to take on the day versus this constant state of burnout. And so these organizations are starting to realize that you don't measure effectiveness by the fact that your employees are working 17 hours a day. You measure effectiveness by the results that they're driving. And so one does lead to the other. The second part, I kind of want to hit the second part.
They're done with this cool British accent. On the second part is how we really think about the future. And it slightly maps back to what we showed a little bit on our go-to-market slide and what we were thinking about in terms of how to scale this out. Right now, businesses are doing almost anything that it takes to help their employees get through this phase of their lives, this attrition problem, solve that, put an end to the Great Resignation, if you like. So that's a very business model centric reason for us doing that. But what's very interesting about this is that as people become digital nomads, as people start working for multiple organizations and not just one, and so they start to peel themselves away from the enterprise, we've armed them with a set of skills that are universal, right? That they can apply to be a business of themselves. So right now, I'm just going to do hand signals here because I don't have a very good visual, I'm afraid, but if you put the company at the center of the universe and all the employees are in the orbit around it, right? And they all are attracted to this thing gravitationally. The opposite is going to be true in the future, right? It's going to be more common that the person is at the center. The organizations are in the orbit around it. And so if we're arming each and every individual in the world to have mastered their own personal effectiveness, then that enables them to take on multiple responsibilities, not give themselves wholly to one cause, to one organization, but to be able to thrive amid a bunch of different organizations, right? It doesn't have to be all for profit. It can be organizations of our kids' school, an organization that is my side hustle, an organization that is my hobby, an organization that, of course, is something that pays me a salary. But that's going to be more of the norm in the next 10 to 20 years. And so we're arming people with a set of skills that enable that as well.
So I'll try to consolidate this, but you're going after right now your model is you're going after the company. So it's a B2B, right? Yeah. So they're offering this to their employees.
Yes.
And yet, what if I'm an employee and I leave?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how is that? How are you thinking about that from a long-term structure? Is this a backpack that I get to take with me and I become a gig economist and all of a sudden I'm a company, so now I can be a part of it?
Yeah. In short, yes. So actually we thought a lot about network effects. So is this, so the question was, I'm selling this to companies. I get this as a benefit. We use that term loosely because it's not actually a benefit like HR departments think of benefit, but I get this as a benefit. I'm all excited about this. It's helping me manage my work in the context of my broader life. And then I leave. So what happens? Do I get to take this backpack with me, as it were, and go off and do other things? And so the short answer to that is yes. And we very much thought about that from a medium-term strategy. So right now, we sell, as I say, into the companies. We create a view inside our tool of the work pieces that the companies need, and then the rest of your life, you keep them, you get to take with you. And so as you take that with you, by the way, you're not only in this tool yourself, you're probably bringing your family members and the people in your basketball team and the people in whatever, all in these various life spaces, is what we call them you have. Those pieces you'll be taking with you, and then there are other people that you're networked with that come with you as you move from one spot to another. So ultimately, that's our conquer the world strategy, as it were, is we use this as a starting point. The buyer is the HR officer, but the customer really is everybody that is working inside those organizations.
So how do you pay for it after you leave?
So it will become an individual subscription.
Who owns the data?
Who owns the data? The companies own the company data, the individual owns their own data.
So how are you measuring effectiveness? And like, have you run pilot studies on consumers to see? I'm just curious, like, what data instruments you use.
Yeah, so I'll give you the 1 minute answer to that, but we can talk about it in more detail afterwards. So we ran pilot groups initially, even before we even had the tool. We ran pilot groups on prototypes, and then we basically did a study, which I'm hoping we'll have documented in the next couple of months, of around 300 to 500 people kind of researching the habits of highly effective people, to borrow a book, and what those meant in practice. And what we found, the real headline figure, which is there is no such thing as a most effective work style. Like zero inbox, great for zero inbox people. But people that are not zero inbox people, lousy, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect work style. However, there are some universal traits that are associated with being highly effective. And as of yesterday, we named that our core 4. That's Rich at the background who came up with that name. There are these 4 basically fundamental characteristic traits that apply across all work styles that make people effective. And that's what's embedded in people.
So if I'm a company, what are my benefits that I'm going to achieve?
Yeah, so it's reduced to what are the benefits I would see as a company?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's an aggregation. So the benefits start at the individual, right? So the individual becomes more personally effective across their whole lives. That has an accrual to the team. So that person's part of what's likely to be a team, 10 to 20 people, what have you. And as a result of that, the team becomes more effective as a team, and then those benefits accrue to the organization. So the way the organization sees it at the highest level is reduced attrition rates, greater employee pulse scores, and overall increased morale.
How much more effective?
So we're not at a point yet.
Yeah,
I'd
say we don't
we
know.
can't give you an exact number of that at this point. The other thing I mentioned as well is that one part of that core 4 as it were, is connecting the work you do, the actions you perform, if you like, to the why you do that, which we refer to as outcomes. And so as we're working with organizations, what we're helping organizations do all the way down an organization is create meaningful outcomes that resonate with the employee and their manager. And so now we actually have a means of being able to define specifically what those outcomes are. And then when you as an employee are asked to go do stuff that isn't connected to the outcomes that you agreed with the your manager, you're supposed to drive. Literally in the tool, you can say, look, you're asking me to do 20 things a week that have got nothing to do with the outcomes that we already worked on. And so it's also a question of being able to drive the right kind of work that is necessary to build, to drive the business outcomes that have been agreed across the organization. So we're not there yet, but we will be able to measure that. And as we measure that, we'll get a better answer to your question.
What's the why behind doing
Reach us as co-founders. What's the why? what's the why for us? I'll tell you what. For me, I was a good worker. I was a hard worker. I started getting to the point personally where I could work all out for 4 straight days for a deadline on Friday, but then on Friday I get a migraine, I can't show up. So for me, what I realized is that effectiveness and productivity are not synonymous. And so for me, personally speaking, I'm not well if I can get a lot of tactical things done, but then I can't perform when it matters. I can't be effective. That is not a recipe for effectiveness. And then for me, I've seen an example, almost every human that I've met, I've seen an example of that. Their thing is different than mine, right? But I've seen an example of that. And so for me, I know it sounds kind of maybe overly altruistic, but I think that if we don't get this right for the mass population, there's not going to be a mass population personally. And so I think that it's make or break for the species over the next decade, and I want to be a part of the solution.
Maybe I should have gone first. I think for me, it actually started kind of like intellectually. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and after Ryan and I met and spoke about this, I've written books before, so I kind of had this idea that we write a book, we were going to call it Unsustainable, and it was going to be, or we may still write that book, I've written a plan for it, etc. But it was all about how, to your point, so about the idea of like, the company wants to drive everybody into the ground. It doesn't actually want to drive everybody into the ground, it just doesn't know a better way, right? And so the actions of our organizations and the way in which we basically passively accepted all of this, right? We've accepted the fact that we can be contactable at any time. We've accepted the fact that we can work from anywhere at any time. So we will, that kind of thing. So it started as that intellectual exercise. And then I referred to this, like these people that we spoke to. So I spoke to, personally, in that first couple of weeks after we started looking at it, like a dozen people that were, many of whom were friends of mine, and friends for years. And I started having conversations with people that were like conversations that I'd never had before. There were conversations where people were admitting to me that they have major relationship problems. There were conversations where people admitted that they'd been diagnosed with clinical depression. There were conversations where people had to me where they told me that they had considered suicide. Suddenly, all of this became like really, really, really personal. And the thing that resonated with me most was this guy that had worked for both of us. And 5 minutes into the conversation, he goes, Paul, I feel like I can do an okay job at being, in his case, a husband and a father, and a terrible job at work. Or I feel like I can do an okay job at work and a terrible job at being a husband and father. But I can never do both, and that's wrong. And at that point, it was like, it went from this intellectual exercise, write a book, it's going to sit on people's bookshelves and nobody's going to read, to no, we got to throw away the golden handcuffs and quit Microsoft and do something about it. So it was, similar. And then of course, there is my co-founder, because my co-founder at Microsoft, and I'm seeing that with him as well, like the migrant thing and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's even like infecting us, right? So we have to.
I think that, right after you go, Francis, I think that the book is a beautiful marriage to the work that you're doing as well. You'll have case studies and whatever to be able to actually draw from, and it will help to make the story even more compelling once the book comes out. Make sure you give me some royalties when you release it.
We'll do the book, but remember, we've got a manager working context wise, not take on too much.
That's right. Francis.
I know we're almost, we're almost there.
So I love the vision, like I love the mindset that you guys have. I think that, you know, you call yourself founders, but it's like you're thinking like industry disruptors, and I think that that's like a differentiator, and what's going to be a differentiator between like what's a unicorn and what's not. Yeah. My question is, what advice would you give to founders in Tulsa that are kind of like identifying problems in their work and their personal life, solving for those funding, they build here? Like, what would your advice be, like how to think about, you know, that platform mindset? Like, how did you get there?
How did we get there? I want to take just one moment to answer a side question, which is important, and I want to say it. Founder burnout is a real thing. It's very, very serious. And what happens is we're so obsessed with what we do, and we love what we do so much that we push it aside and push it aside. And many, many, many startups fail because of founder burnout, right? So it's not the answer to your question, but it's a point I wanted to make, and I know we'll definitely answer that.
No, you can address it, and we'll run.
Okay, so in terms of how people think about the broader issue, I think one piece of like guidance, I guess that would be cool, is that you're constantly wrestling as a founder between this pressure to have like a big vision or the desire to have a big vision, and then this pressure to like, give me the tiny thing that I can understand, the really small thing, the things that the small app, the thing people will buy and stuff like that. I would say never be afraid of like having the big vision, and work at least as much on connecting those two things. So it's the big thing, and then what's the small precise thing that connects to that, that starts you on the journey to that. So for us, for example, our big thing was this hierarchy that we referred to earlier, which is the whole thing. And then very rapidly, we're like, okay, nobody's even going to get to that unless they can get from, you know, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something like that. And so it's like, it's the push and pull of that, but always be aware of both the push and the pull of those two things, so that you can kind of effortlessly go from the small thing to the big thing and back again. And if you don't have the big thing, if you're like, well, it's just an app that farts, if you don't have the big thing, you're not even going to be motivated or excited yourself to continue with it. There has to be a bigger reason, even for yourself, in order to be able to do stuff. And that's why outcomes are the center of what we do. We're always talking about, okay, we're going to do X. What does it mean? Why are we doing X? And so on. That's in our tool, so it's in our game.
Just one other point on that, I would just say is, like, we know the classic startup mantra is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I'll replay that. But then I'll also say is, as you become spokespeople for your problem domain, don't be afraid to collaborate. I mean, I know that there's some apprehension about IP and, you know, sharing your idea too early and things like that. I would put that fear aside and think more in terms of you're giving birth to this idea, but it's going to be influenced by thousands or millions of people. The more people, the bigger community that you can put around this problem, and the bigger steward of that problem you can be, or solutioning against that problem, then the more great minds you're going to attract. To any founder, you're not the most brilliant person in the world. And once you know that, start surrounding yourself with the other brilliant people in the world. Make sure it's a diverse set, avoid groupthink. You know, those are the things I would recommend.
Yes. Yay.
I did that for Cecilia.
Let's give them a hand, guys. So what is your ask community?
So it's actually really simple, which is our app is, yes, being sold into organizations, but we actually need as diverse a group of people as possible using that app. Chief people officers, HROs are our buyers, but the people who are going to be using our app is anybody that's got a job, right? So that's pretty much everybody, right? So pretty much everybody in this room. So you can visit our app directly if you want to. You can get them for free because we're not doing anything. We're not charging anybody. So app.billionminds.com. Go there, check it out, sign in with your Google credentials or LinkedIn credentials or whatever. Give us feedback on how it works. And in about 2 to 3 weeks, something along those lines, we're going to have a user group for our mobile app, prototype prototype of our mobile app. If you're interested in that, we'd love to have you volunteer to be in that.
How do they reach you guys?
LinkedIn,
BillyMinds.com. Our alias is Rising Billion on all social platforms.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming out to 1 Million Cups. We will see you next month for our holiday gathering, our ecosystem holiday gathering. All right. Thanks a lot, John. Say
No. Not yet.
Now we have, so I blame Milton Friedman, but I always blame Milton Friedman. I'm so tired. Oh my gosh. My sugar rush for the morning.
I mean, can we like superimpose our logo on the shirts? Unmediated cup? This is